Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday class with Guy Finley. My name is John. I'll be the host for our session today. I'm joined by a group of fellow students here in Southern Oregon, and Guy is in Florida with another group of students. And as is usually the case, we are joined by other students like you from all around the world. And we're glad that you're here today. We all gather for the same purpose, to learn something new about our inner life and how our life can be different if we'll do the work that Guy so often outlines for us and tells us what we can do better and understand in a different way. So if you're new here, our session is one in which in a moment we'll bring Guy on and he'll deliver a talk that will last about 60 minutes, and you'll see the topic and the key lessons he's prepared for us below. When he's through, we'll take a short 5-minute break just to stretch our legs, and then to come back for the second part of our class, which is an open dialogue with Guy, a chance to ask him directly any questions about the material he's presented or anything that you're working on in your inner life. And that dialogue can be one in which, if you're here on GoToWebinar, for example, you can talk directly to Guy. And if that's not available, or if you wish, you can just send in a written question. And we have a very lively discussion with Guy, and all of that will last until about 90 minutes or so. We'll be done around 11 o'clock Pacific time, 2 o'clock Eastern time. And just so you know, if you can't stay for the whole session, we do videotape and archive these sessions so you can go back and look at them again at your leisure when you have the time to. So with that said, let's get started. Let's bring Guy on and let's get started with our class today. Good morning, Guy.
Good morning, John.
Good morning. Would you like me to read the topic and the key lesson for today to start with?
Actually, just the topic, please.
I will do so. All right, everyone. Here is our topic for today: how to know if your life is in God's hands. All right, Guy, turning it over to you.
Thank you, John. Hello, good morning, of course, good afternoon or evening if you are tuning in to the recorded session. I want to just take a moment to do really what we should all do anytime we sit in the name of what is true, that we might receive that truth. And to do so requires that we set down all the things that are occupying us, including our own thoughts, were that only possible. The title of our talk today is How to Know If Your Life is in God's Hands. You know, I don't know whether or not it's the language that gives rise to the comfort, or in the idea itself there is something that is comforting because we recognize it as true. You take a passage, any passage from Scripture, "Come unto me, all you who are heavy laden, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Now, who doesn't like that idea? There's something to take some of this weight off of my shoulders. Not only take the weight off my shoulders, but give me the rest from this constant struggle that I have with myself and everyone else around me, not to mention a world that doesn't line up the way I want it to. So I pose that question: have we become so identified with the language that we find a temporary consolation in it? And I think that's the answer. Because if it were true, I understood that there is a way in which the yoke, these opposites, which is what a yoke was back in the day, the way for me to carry these opposites that was easy, I'd be the first one. But I don't know that ease. All I know is something pulls me left, something pulls me right, something pulls me down, something says stop, something whips me and I go. Makes me no different than the oxen in the field, which, by the way, is in Ephesians. Struggle in vain. So I'm going to read a few things to you, but starting with this idea that I knew would not be popular when I began to formulate it. Everybody already thinks, if they think at all that way, that their life is in God's hands. You ask anybody, let alone a true aspirant, a Christian, a Jew, is your life in God's hands? Hell yes. Is it? Maybe the more appropriate question would be, and I hope that you'll stay with me, don't listen to what I say as true. Instead, learn to do what you hear, and then you will understand the truth behind it. What God? Whose hands? Whose hands am I in when I'm angry at you? Am I in God's hands, or am I in the hands of a demiurge, a God with a small g? Am I in God's hands when I'm sitting there and can't stop worrying about my money? Is that what or Christ said, consider the lilies. They don't struggle or toil at all. And if I examine my life, and if I'm even remotely honest about it, and I'll try to dial it down before I start at level 7, I want to be in God's hands when the God that I put my life into his hands doesn't prove to be the God I thought it would be. Then I want God. And the God that I want is always something that isn't the God that I believed was there for me to take me through this deal, because I didn't get through it. I'm still going through it, and it doesn't look like it's going to end. The fear of death is still there. The worry that someone won't find me relevant in an important situation. It just goes on and on. Whose God, what God, whose hands am I in when all I am filled with is thoughts about myself and what I need to do to avoid the consequence of a fear that I didn't even know I had until the moment took place. So I hope I haven't, emptied the whole room. Because that's what happens. You go, you don't know me, sir. Oh, yes, I do. Oh, yes, I do. I know you because I am you. The problem is that you don't know you, and that's what these talks are for, so that we can begin little by little not to judge ourselves, which we are so quick to do. You think, don't you, that when you judge yourself, it proves that you are a godly human being, because after all, why would I do something so ungodly as what I just did? And so I'm struck, I'm smacked by my God. God doesn't smack. He reveals. So I better get into this, or I'll spend the whole hour on just an introduction. I have so much to tell you. I want to start by reading something to you that will help us understand as I go through some scripture. First, what I meant by is the language the thing, or is the fact that the lesson behind that language is already latent inside of my heart and mind, and it just needs to be reminded. What does any true teacher do? He doesn't encourage you to become something. He reminds you of what you have become because you're trying to make something of yourself in this world. So let's go through this. This is from Romans. I will try as best I can to explain it without getting bogged down in the language. St. Paul. For I know that in me, and by the way, in me, parenthetically, he's speaking of the flesh, and the flesh doesn't mean what you think it is. The flesh refers to this body that nature has produced that surrounds the kernel of this soul, so that I am a physical being, but I have a spiritual center. I don't know about the spiritual center because my life is centered on the physical. For I know that in me dwelleth no good thing. For to will what is good is present in me, but how to perform that which is good I find not. Now that's actually kind of humorous in a way, but we don't understand it. What's he saying? Look, I know in me, to some extent, that whatever dwells inside of me is up to no good at all. Because what it calls good really isn't good even for me, let alone for others around me. But I have what is good in me. How do I know? Because I can see what isn't good. And because I can see what is good, however, doesn't mean that I can do the good that I see. So I'm in trouble. Now, do you relate to St. Paul?
Yes.
Then he goes on, for the good that I would, I do not. But the evil which I would not, that I do. That's just beautiful, simple language saying, I don't want to be a mess, but I always am. And the problem is, I know I'm a mess, but I don't know how to get myself out of the mess I make. Please? Now, for the good I would do not. For the good that I would, I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. Good in the old language simply means, and it's important, good is as adapted to the end of serving what is noble, true, and beautiful. Good as adapted to the end, so that goodness cannot be separated from what comes out of it. So if something comes out of what you think is good that's not, guess what? Wasn't good. It never breaks down that law. For good, as adapted to the end of serving what is noble, what is beautiful, and more importantly, good as in what is purifying. Because suddenly we see a contrast between what is not good and what is good. And how else would that good become pure, a more clean action, if it weren't for the fact that I could see that's not entirely good. There's a little bit of stuff in there that shouldn't be in there. Do you have a little bit of stuff in your good? Is your good stuffed? I have stuffed good. But evil doesn't mean what you think it means either. In the old language, the original language, evil here means worthless, in effect. Worthless, in effect. So I don't do, for the good that I would, I do not, but the evil, which is worthless, in effect, base and destructive, that I do. We getting adrift here? He goes on. Now, if I do that I would not. Now, if I do that I would not, it is no more the tough language, even to read it. Now, if I do that I would not, it is no more I than that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. Now, if I do that I would not, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. Now, the word sin does not mean what you've been conditioned and programmed to judge yourself for, and what you're always trying to avoid, which means your attention is always on the nature suggesting it to you. But the sin that dwelleth in me. Sin in this language literally means the darkness, the shadows of the ignorance in which I move and live. So it is this darkness, this ignorance, spiritual ignorance, the ignorance of truth, actually, that's what dwells in me, and that's what tells me what to do. And naturally, it's not good because it's always acting in, quote, its own interest, and has nothing to do with the good of anyone else other than what it says is good for me who enacts it, who incarnates it. Please? Yes. I find then, he goes on, a law that when I would do good, evil is present in me. For when I would do good, evil is present in me, for I delight in the law of good after the inward man. Now here's what that means. When I would do good, evil is present in me. I don't know evil is in me unless there is the good there showing me that which I do not know about myself. Do you see? For when I would do good, evil is present. He's not saying evil bad is with me. He's saying that the good in me, the light, is revealing what is not itself, what is not good, and what by its nature is evil, because it serves only itself in a destructive manner, all that it ends with. Then he says, for I delight in the law of God after the inward man. Now he's saying, this isn't so bad because I actually delight, I find beauty in the fact that there's something in me that can see what's not beautiful, but that pretends to be. Everybody following? Yeah. Then he goes on, but I see another law in my members. By the way, your body is your members. But I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin which is in my members. What is he saying here? He's saying there's another law apart from the good, and that law is always trying to bring me into the captivity that is inescapable when I'm acting from ignorance, when I'm living in the dark. If I'm in the dark, I'm going to see only what the dark calls good, and I know by some experience, because light shows me that what darkness calls good isn't good, but only good to itself and for itself. Please? Then he goes on, "O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death?" Now, the death he was talking about isn't just the physical death. The death that he's talking about in that is what happens when the seed of this physical form, when the soul that we are endowed with doesn't come to fruition and become a new man, a new human being. So he's saying that that's a death that is far more reprehensible, in quotes, than the death of the body. That's actually the most important thing a person can do, is attend to life while they're in this body, but they can't attend to life without knowing what their life is. And the evil, in quotes, this nature that tells us this is what your life is, we go, that's great. And then we go out to do what it tells us to do, like the prodigal son, and the next thing we know, we're eating the husks of corn. Please? Then he goes on, "I thank God through Jesus Christ our Lord." What? I thank God through Jesus Christ. And he goes on, "So then with the mind I myself serve the law of God." So then he's saying here, with what I understand to be true, but that I can't do yet, what I understand is true, with that mind, I serve the law of God. I serve as best I can what's good when I understand, when I see it. But with the flesh, the law of sin. So now there's two laws operating in me at all times. But the problem is the law of good, I can't do. But I wouldn't know the law of sin, of ignorance, of being in the dark, unless that good were there. So he's saying I'm standing between the light of heaven and the darkness of earth. Please? Do you follow? I don't want to stretch it too far for you. So here we come. Now, all of this has been leading up to this next part. And maybe you don't struggle yet with this, but at some point, it's you. If you persist, you will have to. What is God's will? Evidently, the will is that there's this light, but part of that will seems to include that the purpose of that light is to reveal what's in the dark. After all, why have the light? If the light's just the light, I don't need to do anything. But there's a relationship between kingdoms, between the flesh and the spirit. But I don't know yet how to navigate those waters, because I am, like Paul, always trying to figure out what in the name of God am I supposed to do here? Yes or no? My mind just all the time, and it'll go looking for something to think about it. It's insane. Because here you are, it's a nice morning, or you're having an evening sitting out on a deck or whatever, and you watch your mind, and it'll go, what do I need to what do I need to nail down? I need to nail something else down, because now I didn't think to myself I need to nail something else down, but suddenly I'm feeling like something's nailing me down, and I better escape it by nailing something else down. Guess what happens when you guess who's being nailed down by any thought you have about how to be free? And guess who's hammering? Please, do you understand what is God's will? To know God's will, I have to know the law. And really, that's what it boils down to. What, in fact, is God's law? Now, I know that you think you know what God's law is. And you'll come up with whatever your religious conditioning tells you. God's law is Christ. God's law is do this and don't do that. God's law is be a loving. All day long, I say I know what God's law is. But like St. Paul, if I'm honest, what I know is good, I don't do. Because when push comes to shove, I may remember for a split second, I may be retrospective and hate myself for not doing the good that I would. But the fact is, when push comes to shove, it's me first. End of story. Because that's what it is with flesh. That is that nature. You've heard dog eat dog? It's a fact of this planet. The bigger dog gets to eat the food the lesser dog doesn't get, or that he takes from the lesser dog. That's what wars are. Everything over a bowl of food imagined to satisfy an appetite that belongs to something that will never be satisfied and never has been, no matter how many wars have been fought, no matter how much has been added to the plate of any particular nation or person or corporation. Better not go down that road right now. What is God's law? We can simplify it. Please just see. What would God's law be? It can't be just this, because then if I try to live by that and you don't live by that, I'm identified with it. Now you're breaking the law. Now I know you're not a good Christian, a good Jew, a good Muslim. What is God's law? Please just see it. I can't do more than I can plead. God, whatever God's law is, it can't be inseparable from his will. Whatever God's law is, it cannot be separated from his will. But here we get into problems. I say, what is God's will? You tell me what God's will is. On one hand, on a good day, you might tell me God's will is that everybody be happy and abundant and all the rest of that. And then I say, well, what is happy? And then you tell me what happy is. I said, well, that's not happiness to me. Your happiness is my unhappiness. Your abundance costs me something. So that I'm in a constant conflict with every word that is ascribed to the will of God. Everything that describes the will of God puts a human being identified with that word into conflict with anybody that doesn't agree with it. Can you see that much? What is God's will? Now, simply put, as best I can, right out of the mouth, if you will, of Christ and every other teacher in scale, if you'll understand it. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's a tall order. Because his will is somehow or other that whatever is celestial, invisible, and timeless is somehow related to and reconciles everything that is in time and that is separate from that kingdom because it lives according to the will of the flesh instead of the will of heaven. So there's the war, isn't there, in quotes? The will of that which serves myself and the will of that which serves and reconciles and redeems everything that's a part of that will. Am I going too fast? So what would be another name for God's will? This is where we get into trouble because we're working towards, I want to know. See, I can't speak for you. I know that when I suffer, it's because I have stepped outside of a law. That if I'm part of the movement of heaven, if I'm within those boundaries, in quote, that are boundless because they allow for every possible choice, but condemns no one for the choices they make, if they will see the choices. What is God's will? What is his law? Because until I know that, I know beyond the shadow of a doubt, I'm outside of it. But here's the rub. To know that law requires that I see the lawbreaker. To know that that law is in me. Not something put on me, not something saying with a whip, you must live up to this law. But in order to know that law, I need to see where that law is broken all the time. Because how else would I know that that law precedes the lawbreaker? The light precedes the darkness that doesn't exist without it. The law precedes that which breaks it. Please? So, a simple way of saying, what's God's will? Well, thy kingdom come, will be done on earth as in, that there must be some marriage, so we'll use the word love. Love must be God's will. But oh boy, now we're in trouble again, because what I call love, you ain't living up to it. And I'm not living up to it. I hate myself when I'm not loving. How about that for a contradiction? Yes or no? I'm ruthless in the judgment of myself, which, by the way, is the antithesis of love, when I don't act loving. And I can't wait to go home and flagellate myself with all that I have done wrong because I'm not the good, loving person that my religion tells me I'm supposed to be. Instead, I'm absolutely the opposite. And I prove to myself I don't want to be like that by how much pain I'm in for living the law of that lesser God. Please, still working, right? So, even though I know the good, and I can barely do that one, let alone both at the same time. Here's St. Paul. I know the good because my mind has this light in it that shows me what's not. But I can really try, and I know some of you do. I really try to be good. Yeah, I am. You said something, and I have to bite my entire face not to retort with something unkind. I'm trying to be good. But in that moment, am I really good, or am I punishing what is not good in me for not living up to what I say is good? Do you understand the question? Yes. How do I become one with the law so I don't have to think about what that law is? How to fulfill it? How do I fulfill that law without an idea of what it means to fulfill it? And there's only one way. I must, one way or the other, become law. Not think about it, not have an attitude, not have a wish. St. Paul was saying it. Look, I get it. I know the law. It's in my mind. The light of Christ helps me to understand what is not part of what is good. But for the sake of all that is, I can't do it, let alone see both at the same time, which is where we're headed for. So let's bring up the key lesson, please, the first one, Eric, if you will. Big transition. Take a nice deep breath, everybody. Sorry to go so long on the first section, but key lesson. Putting our life in God's hands begins with handing it off to Him. Putting our life in God's hands begins with handing it off to Him. I can't be in my own hands and God's hands at the same time, can I? In fact, the problem is, I think I'm in God's hands, but I'm not in God's hands. I'm in quotes, my hands. And what I call my hands aren't even my hands. They're the same soiled hands of humanity over millennia that are filled with the ideas of what good is and that they keep trying to live up to, even if it means burying everyone else that doesn't see what good is the way I do. Please? Yeah. So here we got to that was all just the first page. How in the name of God do I hand my life off to Him? When all I know to do is to identify with my idea of what God's hands are. I identify, look, when I'm happy, am I thinking about how do I put myself in God's hands? No, why? I've managed to put myself in this place. But when I'm unhappy, when is being in God's hands never more important to me? Oh, please God. And you are not asking to be in God's hands. You are asking that God hand you what you need, what that flesh needs, so it can be at peace with itself. Do you see it? Not too strong? How do I put myself in God's hands? The answer can't be known other than a moment-to-moment need for that shows you what it means, shows you the answer. It can't be known. Don't you want the answer to that question? Everybody says, yeah, I want to drive through McHappy's place and get the special meal that comes with God's hands. That's right. By the way, that's what all pleasures represent to us, is the momentary abeyance of realizing that I've been serving something I shouldn't, and now I get the pleasure. But as we both know, we get the pleasure and then we go, oh my God, what was I thinking, right? Okay. So here's how the answer is found and where it's found, even though it can never be put into words, which is what drives people crazy. This is from, and I've talked about this before, but it's a little deeper now. Rabbi Hillel, first, I think BCE, it's thought that Christ actually might have studied with this particular rabbi back in the day, because in the Beatitudes or whatever it is, do unto others as you would have them do unto you as a commandment. Back then he said, don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you, back in the day. So it was just, his was in the negative, which in one respect is more positive, because I would love not to do that, but I still do it. So if I see that I do what I don't want to do, Now I recognize through that action that something in me is acting that shouldn't. Why? Because what is good recognizes it. Please? Here's what he said. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? And then he tops it off. And if not now, when? If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Look, that's part of life. I have to be for myself. I have to be for myself. Well, because what? What is myself in any given moment? I hope this isn't too... What is myself in any given moment? It's what I'm identified with. That's what myself is in the moment. Maybe my health, my family, my loved ones, my livelihood, what passion I have for this or that. That is myself. And if I'm not for that, by the way, as seemingly paradoxical it is, I'm never going to learn what it means to actually be for something other than myself. Because I start to see that I say I'm for this. Have you ever said you're really for someone and then found yourself with a 2x4 smacking them? So if I'm not for myself, who will be? I have to be for myself. I have to make a living. I have to take care of my body. I have relationships that I care about. I have to be for that. Because if I'm not, who's going to be? But then he goes on, but if I'm only for myself, what am I? Oh, you had to bring that in. What a beautiful mind writes something like that. If I'm not for myself, who's going to be for me? That's the flesh. But if I'm only for myself, what am I? So if I'm only for procuring and perpetuating the pleasures, the powers, the possessions that I'm identified with that constitute what I call me, if I'm only for that, what have I become? If I'm only for myself, what am I? So now he's saying, maybe we need to look at what it means to be for myself. Please? If I'm not for myself, who's going to be for me? Well, I got to be. But if I'm only for myself, what does that make me? Well, nothing good. And then he says, but if not now, when? If not now, when? And that question posed at the end of that, really it's a koan. If I'm just for myself, if I'm not for myself, who will be? But if I'm just for myself, what am I? That's a koan. Because you know what it means to answer one side or the other, but you don't know what it means to answer both at the same time, right? And then he says here, and this is the answer he gives. If not now, then when? What does it mean? It simply means this. The question hints at an answer that no one can know until the moment at hand. There's no answer prior to any moment you're in, other than to understand what it means to receive what the moment at hand is trying to help you see about yourself and your relationship to yourself and everyone else in that moment. So the answer, and this, I think this is pretty cool. So I can't know the answer before. How many of you have answers before the moment asks for it? Isn't that where the pain is? Please? But the answer is actually in your hands. But only in that moment. And the answer that's actually in your hands is what determines the real outcome of that moment for its good or its evil. Because my answer prior to the moment, when you don't live up to what I want you to be, is let you know that you failed. You're a miserable person and you've made me miserable. Go buy me dinner. Or the answer is, oh my God, that's all I've ever done is find fault with human beings who don't live up to what I assume they should be. And that my solution is always based on the reaction I have. And the reaction always points to what you have to do to reconcile what you've just ruined. Like, please. If not now, then when? Now we get back into it. But I know what now is. Don't you? Just ask me. And I say you don't know what now is because you can't know what now is. You can only be a part of it. You can't know what now is. You can only be a part of it. And this is where everything becomes, as far as I'm concerned, really interesting, because if that's true, What is this now that I think I understand? It's what my reaction is telling me to what just happened. But the now that Hillel was talking about, even the good that St. Paul was describing, it is the moment of the revelation of creation. That's what now is. The moment of revelation of creation. Don't get lost, just let me explain. What is the revelation of creation? The will of heaven on the will of earth. That which is active, celestial, and timeless, acting on that which is in time and physical and passive. And in that moment, in that union that takes place, something new is brought forth. And what is brought forth out of that union is inseparable from the now in which it appears. The will of heaven acts upon the will of that which is of earth. When the will of heaven acts on that which is the will of earth has no choice, as no plant can do anything other than, here comes the active sunlight, it resists some of that light, it takes some of it in, and the reconciliation takes place between what is celestial and what is planetary. I'm trying so hard to get some ideas into you. Ordinarily, all I know is that there is what's acting, yes or no. And then there's the me it's acting on that's going yes or no. So that the yes and no between what is acting on me and what's being acted on is actually determined by what? By what is reacting in me to what is acting on me. By what is reacting in me to what is acting on me. Do you see it? Yes. And if all I know is the will, the action that comes out of that reaction, then whose will am I? What is my God in that moment when my reaction, the will of it, is saying, take that action, do this, go there, get that? Under whose, am I in God's hands or am I in the hands of a demigod, a little god, a fearful God that's had this reaction to something challenging its domain, and now it's going to disrupt my life, and now I know the action to take, get rid of him, change everything around me. Please? Now is the only time where I can be aware of both wills at the same time. That's what St. Paul was saying. I'm aware of both wills. I just can't do the one I want to. So he wasn't saying that there wasn't something that was willing and warring, but he was saying that there's something that's peaceable and that recognizes that. The big problem is right now I'm still falling into the hands of the other of what isn't good. Yet I'm so grateful to see that. I'm really trying hard. Now is the only time in the revelation of the moment of creation, and there is never a moment of creation that isn't being revealed, because creation can't be revealed unless there's light that shows it. So light is creating and light is revealing its actions. And here I am, I can be aware of that. I can be aware. You know what? I really want to lay into you. But in my mind, in the light that I see myself in, I know that that's not the right thing to do. So where am I in that moment? I'm literally between the will of heaven and the will of earth. Am I not? That's what now is. Now is the revelation of this relationship between something broader, more beautiful, and perfect, trying to bring about that which is not yet part of its kingdom so that they can be reconciled together and that this beautiful celestial circulation called love can take place. So I can see, and isn't this the problem? After I do the thing I don't want to do, I can see that that wasn't good for you or me. Yes or no? Yes. And then I do what? Then I have all kinds of excuses. I'm a terrible person. And somehow that takes care of everything. But does it? Or do I go right back to doing the good that I would not instead of the good that I would? And we know the answer to it. So this is what we're looking at. So if now, not the word, come into your body, see you, see me. Look at me as you look at yourself. Be aware of yourself as you see me and aware of everything that's going on in that moment, and you have an idea of what now is, because that's what is. There's nothing else. What you're thinking about, where you're going, I don't like him. Why is he looking like that? Why is he talking to me this way? All that's not part of now, but it becomes your now, because everything that you react to is telling you what you have to do, so that your now is based in time. Your now always has a time when you won't feel the way you do. God's now has no time when you won't feel the way you do. God's now is showing you you don't have to be a part of what you're a part of, and that there's something else for you to partake in. Please. Yeah. So, how do I exemplify this to you? Let me just go on. An addict, a drug addict, any addict at all. And we all know more or less what an addict is. An addict is someone who finds some kind of consolation in being a captive, finds pleasure in something that is painful. And the addict can't see that what I'm doing to quiet my mind, to satisfy myself, to fix this problem, whatever it is that I'm doing, drinking, whatever, that actually this isn't really helping me. But it feels like it's good because when I'm doing it, I don't feel so bad. And then I feel really bad. And then I know I didn't do what was good for me, but then something comes along, compulsive, and it says, yeah, but look, this is better than what you are without me. I go, okay, you're right. And I take another hit. I do whatever I do. And I'm what happens then? An addict begins to see, how does an addict, you know what? There's no good in this evil. That's what an addict sees. I thought it was good. Now I know it's not good. I see it's evil. And even though I see it's evil, I still do it. That's the plight of an addict. Is they start to know this isn't good. Do you ever smoke and think to yourself, I shouldn't smoke? And then one day I'm not going to smoke. And then one day, however it happens, you actually see this is killing me. Well, wait a minute. How can a pleasure kill me? How can what I thought was good be the source of my destruction? And in that split second, what happens? I realize I've been powerless. I have been in the will of something that I thought was good because it consoled me, when it wasn't good at all because it made me a captive of that evil, a captive of that destructive nature. Please? Yes. So now we have to do something. We're making a transition. We have to look at something that's very difficult for us to confess. But when we do, as we see it, and not to anybody, this isn't you confessing yourself to anybody. That's another whole story. I was about to go on another tangent there. See this. No action suggested by a painful reaction can ever free us from the consciousness responsible for that reaction. No action suggested by a painful reaction. What would be an action suggested by a painful reaction? You didn't do what I want you to do. I went someplace it wasn't how it was supposed to be. Do I have a happy reaction or a painful one? I have a painful reaction. Now, my painful reaction just doesn't go, I'm a painful reaction, let's get on with life. Does it? No. What does a painful action do? Do this. Be that. See this way. And here's the action to take so this never happens again. Let that waiter know you're not going to put up with that kind of behavior. Let your husband or your wife realize that you're on to them, and if they keep that up, they're dead meat. There's always an action that comes out of a reaction, yes or no. But does the reaction that comes out of the reaction actually do anything other than placate the nature that continues that reaction because you've done nothing to address the evil that it does with you and through you when you incarnate that reaction and take the action it suggests? Please? So the real crisis is what? Is the crisis that I can't do the good? Or is the crisis that I think I see what's good because the action promises to free me from the pain of my reaction? So the crisis is inseparable from the fact that this negative reaction, when it comes up, not only does its action confine me to the consciousness responsible for it, but the action confines me to its considerations, because all I can think about when I've had a negative reaction is what my own consciousness is telling me needs to be considered to escape the problem. Please? So the question becomes, will we keep meeting this moment, these reactions, through the same sense of I that we can see now is actually responsible for creating the disturbance, or through a new understanding? And what would be the new understanding? Come on. Well, okay, so let's see. No reaction. All right, I get it. Any action that my reaction is suggesting doesn't work. But I got a problem. I don't know any other action to take. That's all I know to take. I have a reaction. I have this plethora. I have this abundance of thoughts and feelings come right up on the tail of that reaction and says, okay, now you know. Now you see. They don't, you do. And here's what you have to do. And so I am told what to do by the reaction that hides itself in the suggested action it gives me to make the pain of the reaction go away. Does a painful reaction actually want to go away, or like all things, does it want to continue to live? And it does. It reincarnates itself by suggesting, listen to this, how devious it is, by suggesting, here's the action to get rid of me, when the action is the continuation of the thing you want to be free of. But here's the problem. We're conditioned to believe, yes or no, if I feel any kind of disturbance, any experience I don't want, I have to do something about it. Yes or no? That's my life. Something disturbs me, I got to do something. You look at me wrong, I got to fix you. I do something I shouldn't have done, I got to hate myself and promise I won't do that again, and I'm going to go count pomegranate seeds until there's no more pomegranates left. I'm going to do something because I have to make an atonement. But the suggested atonement is always an action propagated, pushed out, pushing me out into doing what it wants to do. Let me, a quick deal. A man goes to see the doctor. Doctor taps his knee. What happens when the doctor taps his knee? It jumps up. Now the man, for whatever reason, panics when his knee jumps up. He leaps off the table, runs around until he runs into a wall, knocks himself out. When he finally comes to, the doctor says, what in the name of God? Can you picture it? A little tap, boom. What in the name of God is going on? And the man says, I don't know. I had this sudden unexpected reaction and I felt I had to do something. The doctor says, yeah, but something terrible happened. But it wasn't because of the reaction. It was rather because of what you did with it. The action you took to the reaction caused you to run into the wall. Hope I didn't hurt the wall just then. Thank God there was a carpet on it. I would have hurt my hand. Have you ever run into a wall after a reaction? Do you think to yourself, I'm about to run into a wall? Do you think to yourself, I'm about to run into what I've been doing for 1,000 years and I'm still doing it? We don't think that. Because why? Because I'm totally identified with the relief the action promises, instead of realizing the action promised by any reaction is the continuation of the flesh, is the continuation of that consciousness. Everybody still going? So if what I've just described, the only real action is what? In the moment of a reaction. What is the only real action that a human being can take? If you followed me at all, I'm not saying you can do this any more than Paul. What is the one thing, if I actually understand any action suggested by a reaction leads me into a wall? What's the one action, then the only action left? No action. To not act from the reaction. Wow. Wow. Is that even a possibility? To not act from the reaction so that conscious inaction is the new unthinkable action? not to act at all the way the reaction is telling me to act, so that I first become aware of what the reaction is pointing to. And if I'm aware of it, then I'm in the good that can see what is not. And now I'm standing in the now, in this place where I'm not suppressing the reaction. I'm not trying to avoid the action it's telling me to take. In fact, the whole moment for me is that I am giving myself over to the will of a new understanding. An understanding that appears in the moment and only in the moment where I see the opposites at the same time. Do you follow me? Because here's the action, this is the will, and I'm all identified with it. I'm going there, I'm going to do that, and then boom, I run into the wall. I go, no, that's the wrong thing to do because I shouldn't be that person. I've still run into a wall because whatever the action is that it's prescribing begins with judging myself. And then I'm in perpetual conflict. That's what the real definition of purgatory is, this endless conflict in a divided mind that's forever trying to save itself or reconcile itself until one day it realizes it can't do that. And the only way that mind, that flesh, can realize it can't reconcile itself is when something shows it the futility, the vanity of trying to save itself from itself. Please, are you following me? So Christ said, leading into this is the inaction, not my will, but thy will be done. Inaction. But his inaction was born out of the revelation that he was a part of, in a real sense, a new moment of creation, a new moment of possibility for himself, for the human consciousness and the consciousness of all humanity. Because here we are still looking at this, still trying to figure out what is the will of God? What is this law? Because if I'm outside of it, I'm outside of it. So, second key lesson, please. Because when Christ said, not my will, but thy will, what happened? Through inaction, what happened? Please, he entered into another kind of action that he of himself could not come up with. Let me know, Eric. Second key lesson. Stay with me, we're almost there. If there's one thing our time on earth should have proven evident by now, it's this. We are never going to figure out how to feel safe once and for all, because the tools we need to realize this imagined sense of security are found only in one place, a divided lower level of mind, where whatever the nature of freedom is that we desire, it doesn't exist apart from a fearful thought of a life without it. I imagine what I need to be fearless, and that's the source of my fear. The flesh says, because it only knows the opposites, here's what you have to do, here's what you have to be, here's how things have to go, here's how you need to be seen. And the minute that my mind fashions onto, and what was the commandment, thou shalt have no graven images, the minute my mind falls on an image, you can't have an image without an identity connected to it, and now the entity depends upon the image being protected or further populated. Boom. Now I lived the will of that which imagined itself, and now wants to keep its imagined life going, regardless the cost to me or anyone else, because it doesn't care. So if in fact we get this, that there's going to come moments, and this is important because I anticipate these comments. Because what are you saying, Guy? That I should be a zucchini? You know what I'm going to say? No, you've already mastered the vegetated state. What do you think paralysis by analysis is? What do you think paralysis by analysis means? Have you seen it enough? It means that I'm so involved in trying to think through what the right action is that all I do is sit there and suffer my own thoughts as they go, yeah, no, no. And I don't do anything. I just suffer, and I believe that suffering is the proof. Like I talked about yesterday, it consoles me. My anxiety consoles me because it proves to me that I really want to know the truth. No, you don't. You're identified with the will saying you must take that action, and as soon as it comes up with that action, that same will says, but that's got problems. There's holes in that action. Oh my God, you're right. What about this action? And it just hands you everything it needs to hand you so that you live in its hands. But now we're looking at something different. There's going to be moments, and there's no question, where one way or the other, I have to take action. Now, those moments don't involve something happening and then you going into thought. But that's what happens now. Please try to see this. Where do my actions come from? We've been talking about it. From where come my actions? From my reactions. So what does a reaction do? A reaction brings up an action that is what? That is defined by and confined to the thoughts that define it. So my action is to go into thought. But when I go into thought, I don't think I'm going into thought because I'm traveling the distance between what that thought is describing and how I'll be when I get there. So that for me, being in thought isn't being dead. For me, being in thought is the feeling of being alive when nothing could be further from the truth, because I am not actionable. I'm not actualizing what is true. I become the actor of a nature that is dedicated to seeing that I keep making these circles. Reaction, action, thought. Thought brings up reaction. Action, thought. Reaction, action, thought. Reaction, action, thought. If I could go fast enough, you'd see a propeller. It's a closed circle, isn't it? And in whose hands, what has made that circle? This is the question. And we know. Certainly not what is good. So then I recognize, if I do, I'm coming to a close. Wow, I'm agitated. I can feel something and say, you got to go, got to get, got to do. I can feel it. And the strange thing is that I actually think to myself when that happens, that's like, where did that come from? Please? Because I'm sitting, I'm okay. I'm not particular. And all of a sudden, where did that come from? You never left it. It's just that your mind ran out of things that was distracting itself. That something your attention had been on that was momentarily satisfying or terrifying, so it still gave you another thing to think about. It's for 1 second or two, the mind is empty. And it can't bear that nature can't bear not having an opposite to define it. And so it comes up with what it needs. The reaction to my experience of this, I'm not happy. Reaction brings up action. Action brings up thought that defines the action. And I'm in a loop. What I've described to you is how you enter God's hands. You enter God's hands by leaving yourself out of the hands of that nature. And the only way it's possible to do that, not by thought, you can't think to yourself, I want to be in God's hands. You do, but it does nothing. No, I have to see in whose hands I am. That's the difficulty. That's what Paul was saying. Hell, good grief, what a wretched human being I am. Because I know whose hands I should be in, and yet when push comes to shove, I fall into the hands of that which I know is not right for me or anyone else. But he's describing a battle, isn't he? He's describing a war, in quotes, which really isn't that, between what seems to be two opposing natures. But if you understand, these natures don't oppose one another, but that one reveals one so the other can be released, then you have a completely different understanding of that relationship and what happens. Now, this is closing. How can I know if I'm in God's hands? Because we've come to the topic, the title of the talk, how to know if I'm in God's hands. Do you understand how to know yet if you're in God's hands? I'll help you. God never hands you off. God never says, here's a thought. God never says, boy, this feeling, you better do something with this feeling because it's not a godly feeling. God doesn't talk. The revelation is the realization. And the realization is, if I'm present at the same time to here's the reaction, here's the action it's suggesting, and then I can see that the reaction, look at me. Reaction seems to be apart from action. Doesn't it? No. I'm saying reaction is not apart from action. I'm saying reaction and action are a singularity. But I don't know they're a singularity because I see the action and I've forgotten about the reaction because I'm comforted by what the action is telling me to do. They're not separate, they're one thing, and they're one thing that belongs to the lower consciousness. And to see that reaction and action are the same thing is the beginning of this divorce, this great divorce between myself and myself. So that if I catch something saying, here, go, do, blah, 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 in that moment, I'm seeing something wants me to get into its hands. But I will not hand myself over, not as a defiance, but as the realization that if I do, I'm dead, which I am quite literally in that moment, because now I have not life, I have the sensation of life produced by an action that promises freedom to come. God never hands you off to a fearful thought. God shows you a fearful thought. God never says, you should be anxious. This reaction, this is what you have to do. God never says, this is what you have to do. Have you ever heard that in you? Not the words, this is what you got to do. You say, you can't let him talk to you like that. You can't let that go unanswered. Are you kidding me? Have you ever heard that? Is that not an action, a compulsion? Anytime you feel a compulsion, you can be sure you're not in God's hands. But the awareness of that compulsion lets you see by that light that which is not light. And then you stay right there. You don't take any action at all. The action is born in the revelation. And then the action is pure, it's clean, it's good, because it doesn't have any of you in it. In fact, the reason it's pure and good is because you have been semi-purified by the perception of this duality at the same time. Now you're not divided anymore. And the actions that come out are an undivided action. That's not the end of the story. That's still not the answer, because you're going to go on living. That's what life is. And then you enter into a completely different life. And I do mean a completely different life. You don't think about God anymore as something to rescue you, because God has rescued you from yourself, from what you call yourself, from all the things that you think are mandatory to avoid the misery that is promised if you don't do as you are told to do. If God ever tells you to do something, there'll be no compulsion behind it, and you'll recognize the goodness in it the minute it speaks, and then your action will not be tainted. Your action will not be tainted. What is karma other than action tainted by an unconscious self? That's what karma is, isn't it? Action tainted by something in me that strives to prove itself, make itself into something godly, special. Then all of that's just there. So the inaction allows you to see what you have never seen before. Because watch, one last point, I got to do it again. Reaction. Action. Oh no. Oh yeah. I think oh yeah is different than oh no. It's not. But I never see that these things are actually the same, because I'm always identified with the action or the reaction. My mind is always on what happened or what I have to do. That's what my mind is on. Always split. It's split because it believes that the action prescribed by the reaction is actually something good for it to do. Now I see, wow, this action and this reaction and the reaction and the action, that's my mind. That's how it just goes on. Holy cow, how did I never see that before? Because now there's light. Now there's understanding. And I must do what I understand if I ever want to enter more deeply into this law that we know we must become if we want true liberation. Let's take a break, come back and have our dialogue. hit the fan, would you, there, Jill?
Welcome back, everyone, from our short break. We're about to move to part 2 of our class, which is, again, as I said at the opening of our class, it's a chance to dialogue with Guy, an open discussion period in which those of you on GoToWebinar can talk directly to Guy, and those of you on other platforms, you can send in written questions that we can share with Guy. And the students who are joining me here live in Southern Oregon, and those of you in the classroom with Guy in Florida, you also have a chance to come up to the mic, and together in this period, we can see what more we can learn through the questions and comments that we share with Guy. Before we open that discussion up, let me just remind you of a couple of things, a couple of upcoming events that we want to make sure you know about. First of all, as always, I want to make sure you remember what our weekly schedule is of classes. We have a full schedule that begins, our week begins with this Sunday morning class with Guy. And then Monday evenings at 6 p.m., we have a study group, an online study group that is open to our Wisdom School members. And if you don't know anything about our Wisdom School, I'd encourage you to go to our website at guyfinley.org/wisdom and learn about this great opportunity where for just pennies a day, you can join our Wisdom School and have access to a whole bunch of different bonus materials and e-courses and our Facebook Wisdom School group and so much more. But that online Wisdom School students online group meets on Mondays. Whew, that was a mouthful. Anyway, let's move on. Wednesday, we have Guy's Classic Talk, 6 p.m. Look back at some of the very best talks that Guy has presented. And then on Fridays, we have another online study group that is open to anyone who wishes to join us. And that group is at 5 p.m., so just a little earlier time. And then the weekends with Guy's Insight Timer Talks at 8 a.m. live. So plenty of opportunities to join us and continue learning with us. Also, I want to let you know that Easter, I'm sure you know, Easter is coming in just 2 weeks, and Guy has said he is preparing a very special Easter message that he'll be delivering in his Sunday talk that in 2 weeks on April 5th. So just kind of make a note of that on your calendar and keep an eye open in your email, because we'll have more information on that special Easter message and its topic, and perhaps some special offers that will be coming with that. So Easter Sunday with Guy. Do plan on joining us for a very special message. All right, let's bring Guy back on, and we'll see if Guy is ready to continue or to go to our discussion, or if he has anything else he'd like to add.
I do want to add something.
All right, Guy, go ahead.
I presented material today and dressed it in ideas that go back thousands of years. And as is true with anything that are 1,000, 2,000 years, there's a different language. In truth, human beings were a lot smarter back then than they are now. They haven't been dumbed down, made insensitive by a constant influx of absolutely shallow, unimportant things. And I get it. I hear it all the time, so I want to address it in those of you who have this feeling or reaction to what I said. So I listen to St. Paul. I try to figure out what he's saying. Even with you explaining it, I feel like my mind's a pretzel. Why is it that if I have any inclination at all, the need, not the want, not the desire, but a need to know from myself in every moment of my life what is God's law, what is God's will? Because I can argue all day long with the clouds and the sky and the ocean and the trees and the mountains and say, you ought not look like that, you ought not move like that. And it doesn't change the fact that I am responding to something that has happened, that is created, and that no matter what I say about what life is doing, it's not going to change the moment of that life. Can I enter into that life or not? Because if I can't, I will never know peace, because I'll always be apart from it. So here I present these ideas. I was sitting here thinking, somebody said, well, I don't understand. This is confusing. Why can't you this? Why can't you that? Imagine a man, and he's sitting on a little dock by the bay. And he has a simple bamboo pole, a piece of line tied to it, and whatever is bait, and he's fishing. And maybe he's got a couple little cod or a snapper sitting on the dock next to him. And then just off to his right, he can hear a school for fishing, for people learning to fish. And the teacher is saying, you need to know about this tensile strength of these lines. You need this kind of flux in the tip of your rod. You need this kind of reel with a certain kind of drag. And the teacher's going on and on and on about the best ways to fish. But nobody's there fishing. And one young man leaves the group and wanders over to the man sitting on the dock by the bay. And he says, I'd like to learn how to fish. The man says, it's simple. Grab a bamboo pole, grab a piece of line, put a hook on it, put your hook in the water. And everything that you need to know about fishing will be taught to you with each and every catch that you make or you don't. It's a lie when you say, I don't understand. That's just a lie. You know why it's a lie? Because if you want to understand, you have to fish. If you want to understand, you have to put the pole in the water. If you want to understand, you're going to have to learn about your relationship between the waters and yourself. All of these things are taught to you, not because you learned them from a book or some person speaking spiritual things. You learned because you engaged, and so you were discovering, and in your discovery you knew what worked and what didn't work, and the clearer it becomes to you what doesn't work, the more accessible becomes what will work for you, and that will teach you further. Now I'm done, John.
All right, Guy, we can get started with our discussion. Fiona is in our queue, so why don't we start with her? So, good morning, Fiona.
Hello, John. Hello, Guy.
Hi.
Thinking about these, listening to what you're saying and what I have been given to see is just not possible had I not, have been given this desire to really listen and follow that exploration. But I was given to see a bigger picture on what you were talking about and being in whose hands are you in when judging or thought in any way to do. Realize that that is false, and also given to see hugely was the thought, the actual event that I think I am judging is also just as irrelevant.
So let me stop you just for a second, because this is the nature of our mind. So if I'm in thought, it's false. But thought, sometimes I want to be able to not just communicate to myself in action, but I need to communicate to somebody else. So our mind always thinks in terms of one or the other. That's how the mind works. If it's not this, it has to be that. If it's not that, it has to be this. This is a mind, Fiona, that vacillates in the opposites without understanding. It's not one or the other, it's one in another. I can be aware of my thinking. The thoughts themselves aren't the problem. But if I'm identified with the thought and I follow the nature that produced them, then I am a captive of that consciousness. But if I can see, wow, isn't it, because isn't that interesting? I just had a thought that I can see I've had 1,000 years, and now I get it, that thought doesn't work. Oh my God, 1,000 years I've had that thought, 1,000 years I've done what the thought has told me, and for the first time in my life I know, wait a minute, don't take the drink. It says, you got to have a drink. I say, no, I don't want the drink. It says, go do that. I said, no, that doesn't work. But for 1,000 years I drank and I did this and I did that. I did the hoochie coo. And now suddenly I see, it's not this or that, it's this in that. Now there is an overriding, a guiding light that allows me to know whether or not the nature talking to me through its thoughts has wisdom or not. And if it doesn't have wisdom, I don't have to think to myself, that's stupid. I'm just done with that nature. It's clean. And when that disappears, what takes its place is another order of wisdom. In fact, it's another order of wisdom that shows me stupidity. We must find a way, and I'm afraid there's only one way to do it. We must find a way to not accede to this pain. And the only way in which a person finally ceases to accede to the pain that compels them to take whatever the action is, the only way that happens is when the person at last sees that the pain that they want to avoid is in fact part of the problem. That no pain can point to a solution. The solution is in the end of being identified with a nature that's pained by everything that doesn't agree with it. Then there's an abnegation, there's a disappearance. There's a release. And then it turns out that you can't grow into something that wasn't there before you grew into it. This is one of the greatest secrets in spiritual life there is. When you outgrow something, what did you outgrow it into? What did you grow into to outgrow that problem? You grew into that which showed you the problem. Do you see it? That's my job. That's my only job. To live, see, die, grow. Okay.
All right, Guy, our queue is open, but I do have a written question that was sent in from Isabella. And she says, hi, Guy, what are some things you would recommend in dealing with the sometimes intense emotions and anxiety that surface with conscious inaction?
Well, that's a bit of a loop there, Isabella. If you're saying this, and I'm assuming you are, and I'll double back on it. So I'm starting to realize I need to, the action prescribed by my reaction when you didn't regard my feelings. The action is telling me that I need to make sure you know that you didn't do that. The action is often a complaint of some kind, even if I never speak it to somebody, yes or no. Is a complaint an action? But it's a default action, isn't it? It's extraordinary. So the action's telling me I need to do this, but I know that's not good. I know it's not good because I've done it 1,000,000 times and I'm still going through the same thing and I've alienated the humans in my life. So now I understand I need this inaction. So now Isabel is saying, well, what happens? What happens when you decide you're not going to act out those thoughts? She's saying, because when I decide that, suddenly there's a lot more thoughts telling me I better act it out, and it's presenting new consequences. So all that's changed is that I have different consequences produced by the same unconscious nature. Same story, exact same story, just a different set of consequences. Maybe a different level of pain, if you can follow that. Maybe a different level of pain, because I was in pain, but I know, you know what? Pain's telling me how to proceed. I know pain doesn't know how to proceed. I'm going to post up. It's a basketball term for those of you who are Hawkeye fans. I'm, I'm going to post up and draw the foul. I'm just not going to move because I know not to move. And then something runs into me. Says, you got to move, baby. Because if you don't move, things are going to get worse. They're going to score. Something else is going to happen. You're a loser if you don't move. And now, oh my God, I don't want to be a loser. And so the paradigm changes, doesn't it? But has it changed at all? No. So that inaction, which is another word for choosing to be watchful instead of willful, remains the case. And if I stay with that, what am I going to learn? Listen to this. I'm going to see the depth, the breadth, the magnitude of everything that every enlightened man or woman has ever brought into our awareness, which is that, oh, what a wretched man I am. There is nothing good in me whatsoever, save for the good that can see the truth of that. That's my answer. On we go. If there's any further to go.
Oh, yes, Guy. And I got to tell you, that's the first time I've heard you use a coaching basketball term here, posting up. You got my attention. I understand.
Well, I tried to make a slam dunk, but I failed. But I did lay up slowly.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
This is what we get $3, huh?
Well, was my answer a three-pointer or not, John? Come on.
Oh, God.
Okay.
I should have just kept my mouth shut. But moving on, I do have a written question or a written comment from Frida, Guy, to share with you. Frida says, "Hi, Guy. I often say thy will be done in my life, but now I understand better that I need to take a more active role in that and be more here and now, and not just assume that I'll naturally see where God is leading me or what he wants for me. Thank you for that." Frida.
Yeah. I didn't get it all in because I spent too much time maybe on the St. Paul part. But when I have a reaction, not only is it telling me what I need to do, we can see that much, right? But can you see the reaction is telling you who to be? Isn't it? So what is it that's telling me I need to be afraid, anxious, angry, self-centered? What's telling me that's what I need to be? Does God tell me I need to be anxious? God did not put the spirit of fear in a human being. So if something's telling me, this is bad, you need to be afraid of this. You just heard news that you've been avoiding your whole life. Oh my God, in whose hands am I? Anytime something is telling you to be negative, you are in the hands of negativity itself. That's simple, if you can see it. On we go, John.
All right, Guy. I have Ellen here. She'd like to talk to you, so I'm going to let her take my spot just for a second.
Hello.
Hi, Ellie.
So your talk today made me understand deeper an experience I had earlier this week. So I just want to share that.
For sure.
It was during the morning when the thoughts are really active while I'm just going around about my usual things. And there was an awareness of some very unkind thoughts she was having, violent thoughts, judgmental thoughts. And with the awareness of that, she started judging herself for having those thoughts. and, why am I still like this? I'm such an awful person. I shouldn't be thinking this way. And then there came an awareness that the so-called good thoughts and the so-called bad thoughts were just all entangled up in each other. They were all the same thing. And I suddenly remembered the scripture about separating the wheat from the chaff. But it wasn't separating the good thoughts from the bad thoughts, because they were all the same thing, tangled up.
Yes. Please, you're headed in the right direction.
Okay, all of that was chaff, and the only kernel of wheat was whatever it was that could be aware of that, and that everything inside of this Ellen nature is just chaff.
Yeah, you couldn't ask for a better insight or the opportunity that was presented by what your mind was doing. I've always said and still maintain that as we are right now, we're outsmarted by an idiot. But as we grow in wisdom, we see idiocy for what it is. And in time, you can't be deceived anymore by the judgment of yourself, by the action you're given as a prescription to bring an end to whatever is causing that problem for you. It all becomes one thing. And then, as you've said, Ellen, then I suddenly see that these things that seem to be separate, action and reaction, they're not separate at all. They're all this chaff consciousness, And then in that understanding, the separation takes place as it does, and I stop spending my life giving my soul energy over to trying to reconcile what can't be reconciled. Now all of that begins to accumulate in a different part of us and produces more of that light because we're more willing to put ourselves into that hand, into those hands.
Yes.
Good, El.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Glad for you.
All right, Guy, let me just take a look. No hands in the queue, and I don't have any other written questions at the moment.
Oh no, what are we going to do?
Well,
Oh,
I see a hand just
If
popped up.
only I hadn't said that.
Yeah. Hans has raised his hand in the queue, so let's unmute Hans and we'll see what he has to say. Hello, Hans, are you there? Caterer, can you unmute him there? There we go. Hello, Hans.
Hi, Guy.
Hi, Hans.
Thanks. This is a great talk again. I thought I was just so impressed that I often think, Guy, why doesn't Guy just get to the gist of what his teachings are? It seems like I've listened to him for so many talks, and I just and then I try to explain what I think your teachings are, and I can't even talk for 5 minutes. But I thought that this talk was, if there was one talk that could stay in perpetuity that would explain what you teach, this would be it. Is that accurate?
How shall I say this? I wouldn't say no, but I would say that if you want the life divine is a flower that never stops opening.
Yeah.
So that I know from myself that the clarity with which I hoped to present this material is just the front runner of another order of understanding. And though a man or a woman grows in understanding that gradually precludes the need whatsoever for them to take thought about themselves, still they will find themselves at times being brought into thought, and the new relationship, the new light, the grower, the broader understanding reveals everything to be what it is. This mind, these thoughts, they pale in the light of what is true. How can I see that more clearly? Because the more clearly I see that, Hans, the freer I am. Said otherwise, because that's the problem. I said the freer I am, but one discovers they were never not free. And that's what the freedom is. That I was always in a world where it was possible for me to see with greater clarity what it is that dismisses the illusion of this action, of who I am, what I have to do. And as all that disappears, fades into the background, doesn't mean that nature isn't still doing what it does. It just means that I'm in a different relationship to it because I'm no longer solely in its hands. My soul is in the hands of that which reveals the ineptitude of that nature. That's all.
Thank you. I think I've been seeing very clearly, like the difficulty in the work is like I love the idea. I love that you kind of reintroduced me that God is with us in all things at all times and in a beautiful way. But I can see where people are drawn by the beauty of the work, but this is the point that is so difficult because you start to see yourself in relation to that light.
Yes.
And that I can see why it is so difficult to continue, because seeing that is, I want God, I want God's love, but seeing that I have not been that is painful.
Yes.
But yet I want
Yes.
the other.
Yes. And how else would I ever know or understand the idea that I have to lose my life to find it? Because that's what you're describing. But see, I want to find my life and keep it. I want my cake and I want to eat it too. And you can't. And as that gradually dawns on you, certain things take place. And one other comment I'll make, Hans, because it's important what you're saying. The kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of light, uninterrupted by shadows, inseparable from all that it reveals, and yet containing within it all that is seen, that kingdom is already in place. Within you already exists the peace that passes understanding. Your work isn't to access the peace that passes understanding. It's to become conscious of the parts of yourself that stand in the way of entering into that kingdom more and more wholly. So we don't create light. We see by what little light we are given where we have mistaken what is dark to be light. And as we die to that identification, lo and behold, we find ourselves with more than a toehold, more than just a foot in the kingdom. We begin to see we have always been in the kingdom, and as that happens, we want to remain there, which means we are more and more ruthless with the parts of us that want to take us out of that understanding. And it's a growing process. That's what these talks are. These talks are a way in which we introduce into our minds not something new, but something that reminds us of what we have forgotten. And the more we are reminded of what is true, the more truly we want to live what we have been given and shown. I'm off.
All right, Guy, we have one hand in the queue and one written question. So I'll go next to our hand in the queue. It is actually two hands in the queue now. It is John Titford, or perhaps it's Karen. We'll go to them first and see which it is. So hello, John or Karen. You're on. Just unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now, Guy?
John Titford.
Hi, how are you?
Holy cow.
Well, I don't know what to do now. I was just wondering if you could explain once more. I'm a little slow on the uptake, but what the will of heaven or the will of God is. I've got a handle on, I think I know what the will of earth is, but
Can you explain a little more what the will of heaven and the will of God is? He understands the will of earth, but what's the will of heaven? Just elaborate.
This is always a problem. Not you, John. But coming at it from this angle, and this angle, and this angle, and this angle. We wouldn't be alive if it weren't for the will of heaven. There wouldn't be an earth that heaven was acting on if it weren't for the will of heaven. We look out and we don't see. It's an extraordinary thing. It's like the fish that asks the teacher, where do I find a school? Or where's the ocean? I'm in the ocean. Why don't I know I'm in the ocean? Why don't I know that were it not for God's will, I wouldn't draw the breath that I have? Were it not for God's will, I wouldn't see the sun shining on the palm leaves outside. Were it not for God's will, there would be no palm leaf growing. So that there's never a moment in which that which is celestial, divine, that which is timeless, there's never a moment that, John, that it isn't streaming. And that's not even an accurate word, because light is in particles and waves, so that there's never a moment that we are not a participant in this ocean, not just physically, but spiritually, that is always being moved, always being acted on, and always cultivating and creating from the content of itself something new that reflects, if you will, the beauty of that ocean. Part of the definition of the word good in the New Testament terms is beautiful. That's actually part of the meaning of good, beautiful. But what's not stated is that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And if I don't see the beauty, then I don't know the beauty. The beauty is already within me. I'm not looking at something outside of myself. I'm experiencing the moment of the will of God, which is that this beauty is there. I'm in it. It's me, but not I. Somebody says something unkind. I know the will that comes up. You won't do that again. That's my will. I know it. But then one day suddenly I'm aware of the fact that that will of mine, it belongs to a law that was created long before I took a body. I got that law from my parents. They got it from their parents, and the sins of the generation are visited on us. Because that consciousness has always been the same consciousness. And it doesn't know that it's that consciousness. So how would a consciousness that doesn't know that it's set against itself ever actually realize that everything it prescribes to itself is part of what's poisoning it? How would that happen, John? Unless there was something that revealed it. So the revelation of that consciousness is not the creation of something new, but the revelation of a different order of consciousness capable of recognizing that it's been on the wrong side of things. That's what the will is. The will is that not only is something always being reborn, but the revelation of that rebirth as inseparable from the moment itself. The will of heaven, that the earth be reconciled to it. The will of Christ, that the consciousness unaware of itself suddenly wakes up and realizes that this indwelling light has always been there, only we have not been within it, and now we can. I could go on for days and probably will, but that's probably enough for now.
All right, Guy, we'll go next to Carolyn, who raised her hand in the queue.
Yeah, I have one more thing to say.
Oh, okay.
John Titford, everybody, how much more adamant can I be? Use your life. How much time is spent in useless considerations? Useless. Why? Because I'm thinking about a thought that I had a reaction to, and now I want to resolve it. Useless. Christ said, lose your life. to find it. What does that mean? It means that you already have a life, but you don't know it because you're lost inside of a world you don't even know you're lost inside of. So is the solution to create a new world, to come up with another kind of kingdom that where I'll be, or is the solution to see that I've been a captive of a kingdom I didn't even know I was a captive of? And then thank God for Christ. Thank God for this living light that shows me the content of this consciousness. Because for the first time, as St. Paul said, now I'm beginning to see. Albeit through a glass darkly, I'm still beginning to see. Then, John, you will know what the law is. Because you won't be thinking about it. You'll have given up all that useless thinking about how do I get, what do I do? And what will reveal to itself what will reveal itself to you is that there was another world. And you can't enter it when you stay in this one. Now I'm good, John. Go to Carolyn.
All right. We'll go to Carolyn next. Hello, Carolyn.
Hello. Hi, Guy. Yesterday you had a talk on complaints, which was similar to today in many ways. But I wanted to say before your talk yesterday, I was happily singing, "Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me." And at the same time, I became aware of a little voice inside of me warning me about this bill that was coming up that I should anticipate and be angry and fearful about. And it was sneaky. And
Sneaky.
And I recognized at that point that I was open to being aware of it. But how many times in my life, like all the time, that sneaky voice comes about and I go with it.
This is so valuable. I know, somebody may think, I'm not want to talk about this because it seems like such small potatoes. There are no small potatoes in heaven. I'm one of those people my whole life, and you can say it's true or not of yourself. Kumbaya, kumbaya, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. And then I go to hell in a handbasket when the food isn't served the way I want it served. And suddenly I see, well, somebody was just saying that. Then I started to see, well, wait a minute. Am I this peaceable person? Or am I a person that believes and finds comfort in being a peaceable person until somebody messes with my peace? Then I'm going to give them a peace, and it's going to be P-I-E-C-E. And then I go, holy cow. Really? And then everything will come in. Oh, like Ellen was talking about. Oh my God. Because it was Ellen that was saying, suddenly I see the what I call wheat and chaff have been always the same thing. And that the real separation is suddenly seeing this consciousness the way it is. And does that consciousness go, you got me? Does it do that? Do you ever hear yourself, oh my God, the gig is up. Imagine, I see you, serpent with forked things. You're not going to deceive me. Oh my God, thank you. You know what? Now I can go away. No, the minute that you catch it, it doubles down. And all it does is come up with a reaction to you seeing the action you'd been given. And now you take that. You see it, and you see it, and you see it. I'm off.
All right, Guy, I'm coming on here because I know we're about 11:15, 2:15 your time. I have another student who walked into the room here who'd like to talk to you.
Okay, so we'll just take whoever is there, and then after whoever is there, oh, no, John, no. Let's go right to the written question. We'll close it up. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Guy. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I liked your fishing analogy because for so long I've been willing to sit on the shore and just watch the fishermen fish and not actually want to fish myself. I actually can't stand fishing.
Had to put that in, right?
Yes. But I can feel that there's something changing in me that actually wants to fish. It's such a big difference between listening or watching the fishermen, to stay with the analogy, and actually having the desire to see what this is about. And I can't say it any differently than that, but I just feel this difference about it.
Debbie, that's good, what you said. And I'll
Yeah.
take off from what you said to help John Titford a little bit. I'll ask you, what does it mean, this metaphor? I have to get a pole and put my line in the water. It means if I want to fish, I have to get in the waters.
Yeah.
I can't fish outside the waters, can I?
No.
All I catch is some imagined something or other. But to fish in the waters, and this is what John was asking, how do I fish in the waters? I have to enter them. And what are the waters that I enter into other than this beautiful, seamless, endless matrix of the moment and what it reveals? Those are the waters. Those are God's waters. That's the ocean of God's life. Creation and the revelation of it. I've got to get into it. But I don't have a boat. I don't have a bearing. I don't have this. I don't have that. I can't. I'm afraid of these waters. Like you said, I don't like fishing. You don't know what it means to fish. What you know is the idea of something slimy and something you don't want to touch. That's all we know, right? So as long as I live from something that says I don't want to get into the water, I won't get in, because the waters that I say I don't want to get in are the waters of that murky mind.
Yes.
And so I have to get in. Let me get a toe in the water. If you just one time catch an action that the reaction is prescribing and realize I must not this action, but inaction, observation over action, you will see something about those waters. And then as you enter into them, lo and behold, you find out I'm meant to be in these waters. That's actually my home. Not this desert of thought, rivers of reactions. No, the actual waters of life itself, the actual light. That's my home. And the more you enter into it, the more comfortable you are, because you understand nothing can happen to you other than the discovery of how vast that ocean is.
And I would if I could just add that you have to really start to be hungry, like you have to really want to eat. Like if we're talking about a fish, right? There's a desire in you that really has to want that more than the way it's been living, more than the pain that it's been going through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed people try to diet? Well, I'm not saying anything personal. I'm just saying, I say people are always trying to diet. But if you've ever, of your own volition, actually gone 3-4 days without food, a carrot that you ordinarily would go, I don't want that carrot. That's the most beautiful thing that ever came out of a garden, a simple carrot. Why? Because I'm hungry. I know what hunger is. I know what satisfies that hunger. Spiritual hunger is fed not by giving it substitutions, but by seeing the uselessness, the futility, the husks, and then finding food waits for you at home in these waters, to finish up the metaphor.
Thank you, Guy.
Okay, Deb. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
So we did have a written question. You want to get that done, Guy, here?
Yes, and then we will say, fare thee well.
Fairly well, indeed. Okay, we'll end with this written question from Kelly. She says, hi, Guy. I heard you once say that this consciousness is not in us, we are in it. Did I hear you right? And if so, could you elaborate a bit?
I'm just deciding on the length of the answer, Kelly. When I have a reaction, I'm pretty sure that the reaction is in me. Are we not? That's my reaction. But I know 100 million people that have the same reaction. Is it my reaction then? Or does something in me say I to that reaction, making it personal so that the action it prescribes then becomes the solution to the pain I blame the reaction on? So if the reaction is universal, if it's not my mind having it, but it is a mind having it, is that mind in me, or am I in that mind? And then if you can understand, obviously, I am in that consciousness, then it doesn't deny, it doesn't keep the fact from being that it's like ragu, it's in here. That's where I see it. And so you begin with, it's another whole talk. You can't be free of the world outside of you until you're free of the world inside of you. And the freer you become of the world inside of you, you realize, holy cow, that world isn't out inside of me. It's always been something that I have been a participant in, that has plagued me, but now no longer. When I was a man, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, but now I'm as a man and I see things as a man. Now I see the true story. Then these questions will go away by themselves, Kelly, because you'll be a participant instead of someone troubled by what you don't yet perceive as true. That's what we're after with all of these talks. And on that note, I will say goodbye, and I will see you next Saturday. Bye.